back to our Golden 20s podcast. My name is Tegan, and I'm joined with my co-host Sadie.
Hello.
And we are here to chat about weddings because it is wedding season, I think officially. And spoiler alert, if you're new to your 20s, I feel like you will spend a lot of your 20s going to weddings. So we really want to break it down. I've been to a lot of weddings, probably like, I don't know, 10 if I'm counting all the ones from when I was small. And I had my own wedding twice, so I consider myself an expert.
Amazing. I feel like we're going to talk about being a wedding guest, but also a bit about being a bridesmaid, because that is where I have the most experience. It's funny, I was actually thinking, how many weddings have I been to? And I was like, well, I don't know if I've been to very many where I haven't been in the wedding. Either I'm a bridesmaid or I'm a plus one. So I've been to a lot of weddings, but not as a true wedding guest, you know? But all of that being said, I'm an expert on how to be a maid of honor, how to be a bridesmaid. So we're also going to share some tips around that. I think if you're later in your 20s, I think probably around like 25, between 25 and 27, you'll probably go through this phase where it's like, oh my gosh, everyone is engaged. Oh my gosh, all of my friends are getting married. And you'll find yourself in the position maybe of being asked to be a bridesmaid. And there's a lot that comes along with that. So we'll also chat through that in today's episode as well.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Okay, I think that we can start with kind of like weddings 101. If you're someone who's listening and you've never been to a wedding, or you've only been to a wedding where you've been like little, so someone else was doing all the work, I'm going to try and break things down to be like super, super simple and easy to understand, because a lot of wedding sort of traditions and rules are very old and based in old etiquette. So it's kind of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily know until you know it. So I'm trying to protect all you listeners from a faux pas, if you will. So if you just received a wedding invite, what do you do? What happens? You read it thoroughly. Step 1, check the date and check the location. Check that you're invited to both the ceremony and the reception. I know some people split it up. So go over all those details, check your calendar, visit the wedding website, make sure you've got all the information. The next step is to RSVP as soon as you can and to be thoughtful about the decision. So don't just RSVP yes without checking anything because you're like, yeah, I'd love to go. Sounds fun. Yes. Or don't just RSVP no because you're like, meh, I don't really feel like it. Like, think deeply about it. If you don't want to go, that's totally fine. No matter what your reasoning is. It could just be that you can't afford it. You're super busy that month. You already have something else that date. Those are all totally fine reasons to RSVP no, but just do it as soon as possible. You don't need to justify or explain things. A no should be sufficient. And the idea is that a lot of venues have a minimum guest number. So if you can't make it, let the bride and groom or bridegroom and groom know as soon as possible so that they have time to invite more people or whatever it might be. And then obviously say yes as soon as you've figured it out, because then they have time to order food and figure out all those details. Do not be the kind of person who doesn't RSVP, because that is rude and very annoying. Another thing is, when looking at the invite, check to see if you are allowed a guest. They will usually say your name plus a +1 or your name plus your significant other's name. If it doesn't say that, you're not allowed to bring a guest. Period. If you bring a guest, they will not have a seat and will not have food. So be really clear with that. This also applies to children. Just because you have a child does not mean that they're automatically invited. I have never been to a wedding that's had children, actually. They've all been child-free. So that's something to keep in mind. And if this affects your ability or desire to attend, again, you can RSVP no. It's not a big deal. If you're like, I don't want to have to pay for a babysitter to go to this wedding, all good. Just RSVP no.
Yeah. A lot of wedding websites now too, when you go to RSVP, first of all, a lot of them are on the wedding website. So definitely make sure you're checking that out and where to RSVP. But when you go to RSVP, you also need to say how many people are coming. So for instance, when my sister got married, families with kids, like she put, they could RSVP up to 4 people or something like that. You know, if you're going and you were invited to bring a +1, but you're not bringing a +1, then just make sure it's very clear in your RSVP how many people are coming. And sometimes too, that signals to me, as someone who doesn't have like a significant other to bring with her to weddings, it's like, I didn't even know that was an option until I go to RSVP, and it's like, okay, out of 2 people, who's coming? And it's like, oh, okay, you know. So if you're unclear about if you have a +1 or not, I agree, maybe err on the side of caution where you like don't assume that you do. It's better to assume that you don't. But the whole RSVP process could help clear things up as well.
Yep, definitely. So I definitely want to reiterate to check out the wedding website. Most weddings have a website at this point. Every wedding I've been to in recent years has had one. And this is just a place that has all the information. So it'll have the timeline of the day. So this is something really important to pay attention to, is when is the start time? You want to be early. I'm going to get more into that, but pay attention to that, as well as the location. If they have a hotel, a lot of couples will get a hotel room block, so you can sometimes get a cheaper room because it's a group discount, and the dress code. And you've all heard me rant about dress codes before, but Google what the dress code means. Black tie and cocktail are very, very different, and you don't want to show up and look silly just because you didn't know it was black tie because you didn't check the website. So that's sort of a main one. Google's very good at breaking everything down. Some major rules of thumb are avoid the colors black unless the wedding is black tie. Avoid the color red because in some other cultures, the brides wear red, not white, and don't wear white. So you're trying to avoid the bridal colors as well as black because it gives funeral vibes sometimes, unless it's black tie, and then it's allowed.
Yeah, totally. I heard this tip once and I really like it for any event, but it applies to weddings as well, where if you're unsure of what the vibe is, or you're unsure if there wasn't like a stated dress code, something like that, then try to match your outfit to the invite. So if it's, you know, like a pretty casual and quirky looking invite, then maybe you can have more of like a, I don't know, low-key outfit. I feel like avoid jeans at all costs, even if it is casual and just a backyard wedding, still avoid jeans. But besides that, you know, you could probably just put on like a nice dress. But if it's like a really fancy invite, if it was like in the mail, there's wax stamps, there's, you know, the whole 9 yards, it's like, okay, let's try to match the vibe of this. And same for colors as well. I feel like it's always nice to complement the colors of the wedding, obviously avoiding the like true traditional black, white bride-groom colors. But, you know, if there's like light purples and blues on the invite, then maybe you try to go for like a purple or blue dress or something like that, just to try to fit the vibe.
Yeah, definitely. Even taking a look at what the venue's like, I feel like can help with figuring out the dress code too. Like if it's a very fancy venue, it's better to err on the side of dressing fancier. So definitely a good tip. I think the next thing you'd probably see on the wedding website is the gift registry. And so a big part of weddings is purchasing a gift. And the idea with a registry is that people are basically making like an Amazon wish list of things that they actually need. And you are picking something off of the wish list. And the best option is to just buy something that's within your budget off of the registry and have it shipped directly to their house. Don't feel like you have to ship it to yourself and bring it to the wedding, because then it's like the bride and groom have to then bring the gift home in their car, and then there's a whole bunch of them, you know. So it's totally fine to just be like, I'm going to buy the gift and send it ahead of time. You're also allowed to send gifts up to 3 months after the wedding. So if for whatever reason that works best for you, that's another option. When in doubt, cash in a card is perfect. Everyone loves some good cash.
Yeah.
I've heard the rule of thumb for wedding gifts is to try and cover the cost of your plate Now, obviously, you don't know exactly how much that is, but this, again, you can look into the venue, take a look at the invites, kind of see what the vibe is. If they're having a huge wedding at a super fancy venue with an open bar, it's like presents can be larger. If it's like a casual thing, you maybe don't feel inclined to have to go that far. But then again, it is also dependent on how close you are to the couple. I don't think anyone would be offended that like the plus one that they've met one time only gave $100. You know what I mean? So when in doubt, cash is good. Kind of play it by ear, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
I think on the cash too, like it's also nice for if you know they're planning a honeymoon. Like I feel like cash just goes a lot further than actual gifts, because even just the whole idea of like wedding gifts, like I understand why we're giving gifts, but the idea behind it kind of feels outdated to me, where it's like typically the couple don't live together yet, and then you know they're getting married, they're starting their life together, therefore their wedding registry is everything to start that life together. Where nowadays a lot of couples do live together already, and they already have a lot of things. Maybe it's not really great like quality things, but they already have a base that they're starting with. So I just feel like the whole registry thing depends. Obviously people can use that as a way to level up some of their home items, but I love the idea of just giving cash and saying it's for their honeymoon. I also have been thinking about this a lot lately because I've actually RSVP'd no to a few weddings this year, taking a break from the weddings, which is actually really nice. And this episode's a little triggering for me. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, when my sister got married last year, it was interesting because even people who RSVP'd no sent her a gift or money. And I was like, is that a thing to do? And then when I was RSVPing no this year, I was like, is it right to be sending a gift still? Is it expected of me? So I was looking it up and obviously thought this was a great time to share that information with you guys. But what I found was, it again really depends on how well you know the couple, exactly what you were saying, Teg, for the actual gift that you're giving them. But for my sister, it was like a lot of family that was unable to make it for other reasons. They were giving money still. However, for me, the like weddings I was invited to this year, it's like friends of friends, where I'm not really that close with them. So I'm like, I don't think it's expected of me to still give a gift. However, that is something that you maybe want to consider if you're unable to attend a wedding that you feel like you should be at or you really want to be at but can't be for some reason. Might be nice to still buy them a gift. And yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. The other thing too, actually, something that I was Googling last year was if you need to give a gift for destination weddings. Because again, last year I found myself first time ever being invited to a destination wedding and I had no idea what to do with this. And it was the same sort of thing where it's like, it's totally up to you, your relationship with the person. If it's a destination wedding and you're going, you're probably really wanting to be there and you're close with that person, knowing destination weddings are a very large expense that you probably aren't just going to do for anybody. So the kind of like narrative around destination weddings was you don't necessarily need to give a gift. It's not typically expected. Like, for instance, usually a destination wedding is like thousands of dollars, you know, for like a week all inclusive or something, which is a lot more than you would probably give as a wedding gift to a local wedding that you're attending. So it all kind of evens out. But that being said, I do still think it's nice to give a card, and typically there's still a card box at a destination wedding. And even if it's not cash inside, like I wrote my friend like a really nice handwritten letter and just wanted to give her something that was completely free but still very meaningful and I knew she would appreciate. So just an idea for destination weddings as well.
Yeah. I've always heard no gifts for destination weddings. Obviously, if you want to give a gift, I'm sure the couple would be very happy about that. But yeah, that was what I had always heard. And then as far as gifts for people who RSVP'd no, I found it was like 50-50 gave me gifts, and it tended to be the older people. So I'm like, these are the people who like that was the etiquette of the time. Obviously times have changed, so it wasn't like problematic that people were RSVPing no and not giving gifts, but it also wasn't surprising that we got gifts from people as well. So it's totally up to you. Play it by ear. Like, don't feel pressured to give a gift. And especially like if you're RSVPing no because you can't financially afford the wedding, don't be like, but now I still need to buy a gift. Like, that's totally fine, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Great. So we've got all the prep done. You've got your outfit planned. It's the day of the wedding. I wanted to break down some more things. The first thing is something I've already mentioned, and that's to arrive early to the wedding ceremony. I like to say 30 minutes because you don't know what's going on. You don't know if there's going to be traffic, what the parking's like. Like, I've been to a couple weddings where the ceremony's at a different location than where the reception is, and it can be confusing figuring out the door. So you want to build in time, because the other thing is I find that a lot of people tend to sit near the back, and you don't want to be coming in late to this wedding and having to walk straight down the aisle to sit in the front. Like, it's better to give yourself some time and figure it out. And there's also some venues where if you miss the start of the ceremony, they will not let you in. And then you're standing on the sidewalk in the rain, in your heels, whatever the situation is, for however long the ceremony goes on for. So try to avoid that. And then you have time to like say hi if there are friends, family that you know, get a good spot, whatever that might be. Try to avoid the first couple of rows. It's the same etiquette as funerals, where usually the first 2 or 3 rows are reserved for family. Sometimes weddings will have these blocked off, and there used to be a lot of rules about which side you could sit on, but I've found personally that most weddings nowadays, it's kind of a free-for-all. People don't really care. You can Google it. I've done that before when I've arrived. Like, wait, which side am I supposed to sit on? Because one side's supposed to be groom side, one side's supposed to be bride side. But I find that most people don't really follow that rule anymore.
Yeah, I know that's often a decor, like DIY sign to, or a decor sign to DIY for bridal parties, is that you can pick a seat, not a side sign. So I definitely think that is common. But if you're unsure, like you don't see a sign, you're unsure, just look if you know people who are already there and sitting, and just like sit near them, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Also, another thing, it's already kind of been mentioned, but it's you have to attend both the ceremony and the reception. I feel like some people think it's okay to just attend one, but that's not really proper etiquette. Obviously, if there's something going on and you can only attend one for whatever reason, that's fine, as long as it's kind of planned that way far in advance with the couple. But usually the couple wants you to see the wedding and then celebrate with them, not do one or the other. So if you can only attend the ceremony, make sure the couple knows so that they don't pay for your meal and your drinks at the reception that you won't be able to attend, and that sort of thing. And kind of along the same lines, in the event of an emergency that would make it so that you can't attend anymore, make sure you reach out to the couple as soon as possible to let them know, because they've probably already paid for you. So especially the day of, if you can't come, obviously the bride's probably not going to be on her phone, but I still like the idea of sending a message to let them know, just so that if for whatever reason they can figure out a way to get more people there, or if they can get a refund on your seat, they have the time to figure out how to do that. And, you know, these things happen. It's all good. And then I think in that case, that would be a good time to send a gift of cash. Like, we had someone who didn't make it to our wedding because their train got messed up. And so he gave us the cash equivalent of his seat of like $250, basically being like, sorry, I wasn't there, I'm paying you back, that sort of idea. So definitely something to keep in mind. I also wanted to mention limiting the use of your phone, keeping it on silent. Do not take pictures during the ceremony. They hired a photographer for thousands and thousands of dollars. They do not need your blurry iPhone pictures. It's getting captured, don't worry, and there will be lots of opportunities later to take pictures. So definitely keep that in mind. Obviously, I feel like everyone listening would have their phone on silent, because I feel like my phone's been on silent for 10 years. But, you know, a good reminder, most of these things are unplugged. And you also don't want to be the person who in every single reception picture is like sitting on her phone in the background. So something to keep in mind. Once the ceremony is done, you'll probably be heading to the reception space where there usually is a cocktail hour, but you never know. And this is where you'll find the seating chart, which is basically the explanation of who's sitting where. Some weddings don't have them. Most ones, especially if there are a lot of guests, will have a seating chart. So definitely check that out. And there's oftentimes name tags at your chair as well. So make sure you're sitting in the right seat. The idea behind this is that if there are people with dietary restrictions, the caterers know exactly where they're sitting, can give the food to the right person, that sort of thing. So don't just sit wherever you want because it's fun, or change seats because you want to sit next to your friend. Like, I guarantee there's been some plan made to get people the right food. So that's something to keep in mind. And kind of on the same line as showing up early, don't leave too early either. Like, it's not a good look if you leave halfway through dinner. The general rule of thumb is to stay until the cake cutting. Obviously, like, if something comes up and you need to leave, go for it, but plan your night accordingly, that you will be staying there until at least like 8 or 9. And they spent a lot of money and they want you to be there to celebrate their special day. They probably want you like out on the dance floor celebrating with them. So definitely another thing to keep in mind.
Totally. One thing I've heard from so many different brides at weddings I've been at is people don't take their favors home. Like, usually there's like wedding favors and people are like, what the heck, we spent so much money and nobody took them. So look for those on the table. Like, usually it's at your table seating or sitting. What is the word I'm looking for? But I'm having a hard time with words today, but you guys know what I'm saying. At your table, usually that's where your favor is. Or sometimes I guess there's a table, kind of like if there's a guest book, the seating chart, and like a little area like that set up in the reception hall or venue. Look there. And then the last thing I was going to mention too is obviously weddings are a big time of celebration, and a lot of times that comes with excessive drinking. So I think the one thing I always make sure is to have a plan for how I'm getting home that night, knowing I don't drive, I don't have a car. Oftentimes it's who can I carpool with, or is this like an Uber Lyft situation? And why I want to mention this is because a lot of venues are on the outskirts of town. Like, they're not super close because it's a nice venue that accommodates a lot of people. So it's not just, in a small place right downtown or something like that. So just really factor that in. And then Tag, I know you already mentioned the whole hotel block, things like that. But if you are having a hard time finding a DD, or you're not able to Uber or Lyft home for whatever reason, maybe it's just booking accommodations that are near the venue, so that you don't need to find a way home, but just have somewhere to go at the end of the night. But that's something you definitely need to plan for as well. Cool. Well, that was lots of information, but I feel like hopefully you guys had your pens and paper writing down all those tips, because I feel like that's really great. Like you said, wedding 101. I think now we'll jump into bridesmaid and maid of honor duty. I think the first thing to know about this, again, what you were saying about being a wedding guest, is it's okay to say no. I feel like it's really hard to say no to be a bridesmaid or maid of honor, because it's like that person like put thought into this. They're choosing only so many people and they chose me. Like, I don't feel like I can say no. But all of that being said, you just heard how much of a financial commitment it is just to be a wedding guest. And to be honest, it's even more so when you're a bridesmaid or maid of honor. So you need to actually consider, is this something I have the time and money to do? Or am I going to say yes and then make everybody's life miserable because I'll be bitching about this until, the wedding's over? So be honest with yourself and be honest with your friend as well, where if you need to say no, that is 100% okay. That being said, if you are saying yes, essentially what you are signing up for is to be there for the bride no matter what she needs. So that is in all events, and it could be the groom as well. But in this case, if one of your girlfriends is getting married and she's asking you to be a bridesmaid, you're there for the group chat conversations anytime she needs opinion or just to rant, emotional support, if she needs to delegate tasks and have people do things on her behalf or help organize certain things, then you're there to help her and be a shoulder for her to lean on. And then I think, especially if you're a maid of honor, but also a bridesmaid as well, the biggest things that fall on you guys to organize from beginning to end is the bachelorette and sometimes the bridal shower as well. I know usually like moms, mother-in-laws get involved in the bridal shower too, but I do think quite a bit of that responsibility can fall on the maid of honor and bridesmaid as well. And the bachelorette can be a whole thing. So definitely make sure you are aware of that, I guess. And again, saying yes or no based off of that. I think too, all of this being said, having that like transparent conversation with your friend who's getting married about the time and money investment, if you're able to do it or not, is important, but also just what they're expecting from you. Like, for instance, when I was Tegan's maid of honor, I feel like I had to ask her, knowing I'm such a control freak and I want to be as involved as possible, it was like, what do you want me to do versus what are you doing? You know, what do you want to be a surprise versus what's going to give you anxiety if you don't know what I'm doing? So we had that conversation, and I think that's really important to have with your friend, because you might think you know your friend really, really well, but when they're a bride, they might turn into a totally different person, you know? Like maybe they're completely unorganized in their day-to-day life, but as soon as it comes to organizing the wedding, they have a plan for everything. They know exactly what they want. So you want to do your best to show up and be there for them, but also not burden them in any way. Could also be, you know, telling your friend that anything she needs, like, let you know. But if your friend's not delegating a lot, then maybe you need to be checking in with her more often and like asking to take things on if you know she's overwhelmed, but she isn't the type to ask for help. So these are just the types of like transparent conversations to have up front and things to think through before you're, you know, 100% committed, yes or no, to doing this.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's really good to note. Like something that we did before my wedding was we had like just a little chatty dinner where we talked about what like the expectations were, what sort of events we wanted to do, what the vibe was, all that sort of things before we got started. Because I find, especially like with nowadays with etiquette being so different and the combining of so many different cultures, it's like it's hard to know what anyone's vision for their wedding is exactly without talking about it first.
Yeah, 100%. And I think actually that goes into my next thing I wanted to talk about was being there for them on the wedding day is one thing, but to be honest, that's probably, maybe this is a hot take, but this is probably the most like smallest part of being a bridesmaid and a maid of honor is the day of. It's all the little things, all the planning that is leading up to that day. So I think having an understanding of time frame, but also the vision behind the engagement party, dress shopping, bridal shower, the bachelorette, the rehearsal, like these are all little things that you probably want to have an idea of when they're going to happen. And I know that's what we chatted through when we had like our little dinner ahead of Tegan's wedding was, okay, what are we thinking for the engagement party? Like what month is going to make sense in everyone's calendar where we can all be there kind of thing. For a bachelorette, are they envisioning a destination bachelorette? Is it just going to be a one night thing versus a weekend thing? Like these are all good things to know so you can plan not only your budget but your calendar around these things, knowing it is a lot of little events that lead up to that one big day. I think focusing in on the bachelorette specifically, knowing this is the biggest thing for the maid of honor and bridesmaid to organize. I think, again, chatting with your bride about what she's wanting, if she has a theme in mind, things like that. But then it's really your responsibility to be sending the invites, managing the RSVPs, any communication about the bachelorette. You are the go-to person for that. You can answer any question or figure out any answer to any questions. And you are just like the point person for that event. And then I think it's also your responsibility once you know who's all coming, your numbers, to make reservations, plan the actual events that you'll be doing on the bachelorette, and then creating things like decorations, putting together gift bags, making games, just having like doing all like the little details, I guess, on the actual day of the event as well. And then the other big thing that I want to stress too, in terms of all these little events around the wedding, is the rehearsal. I feel like this is something that is so important, but very overlooked by the bridal party, both bridesmaids and groomsmen, is how important it is for you to be at the rehearsal. So make sure you understand when that is happening, you understand when you need to be there, just so that the bride especially has ease of mind on the actual wedding day, that everybody was there for the rehearsal. They know exactly what's going to happen. You can go through that wedding timeline. You can practice walking down the aisle, who's walking down with who. All of that is figured out so that the actual day of goes off without a hitch.
Yeah, definitely. I did want to say, if you are someone who would be in the bridal party, have your expectations very low for the help that you will be getting from the groomsmen party. As someone who had 2 weddings, these boys were not on the ball like the girls. So definitely keep that in mind in your planning as well. That could just be my friend group, but that was my experience.
Yeah, 100%. Men, this is like a very generalized statement, but men are very good at following orders. They're not so good at like initiating what needs to be done. Like if you tell a guy, go do this, he'll go do it. But for him to know to go do that on his own, no, not going to happen. Okay, so the next steps, also something you'll want to do ahead of the actual day, obviously, and with as much notice as possible, is ordering your dress. So this is another thing to be chatting with the bride about, is just understanding her vision for what she thinks you guys should wear, or if she has like a color scheme or styles, if she wants everyone to match and wear the same thing, or if you kind of have some flexibility on what to wear. All of this is probably something that the bride will be very excited to talk about and initiate herself. But if not, definitely initiate that conversation just so that you are, again, bringing her vision to life. I think a lot of places for ordering online, they tell you like how many months in advance you should order your dress, but the idea is, or how long it'll take to come in if you're ordering from online. But the idea is that you want to make sure you have enough time to get it fitted and altered if needed. And also don't forget your accessories. There's been many times where I'm like, okay, I got my dress. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, but wait, what shoes am I going to wear? And it's like that scramble before the wedding because I didn't even think about my shoes and my clutch, just because I was so focused on the dress. And then the last final touches for your look. I won't be surprised if the bride asks you, hey, who wants to get their hair and makeup done? So think about that. I think this could be a spot to save money if you are looking to do that, or you're trying to find ways to save money in this process. However, that being said, for me, I always feel so much better when somebody else does my hair and makeup. It's just one less thing for me to have to worry about. So it's worth the expense for me. However, again, that's just something that you'll want to decide and communicate to the bride. If it changes, tell her as soon as possible, because it's probably the number of hairstylists or makeup artists that they need for that day will change based on how many girls are getting their hair and makeup done. And then something I have always liked to do is just run my inspo pics by the bride just to make sure, again, this is executing her vision. This is aligned with what she's thinking us girls will look like. So if that's just, showing what I want my hair to look like, usually it's pretty low key. I'm very like anti anything extravagant because it's all about the bride this day. But yeah, could just be a good thing to do. Show your inspo pics to the bride.
Yeah, I did want to say, if you are asked to be a bridesmaid and you're worried about the financial side of it before you say yes, it might be a good topic to talk about with the bride, the expectations around your dress and that sort of thing. Because the one wedding where I was a bridesmaid, we had to buy our dress from this certain place. So the dress itself was $300, where some other weddings, it was more like my wedding, it was just the girls were given colors. So like my cousin bought a secondhand dress, that sort of vibe. And for that wedding I was a part of, we had to get our hair and makeup done by the artist that she had hired. And we had to wear certain shoes and certain jewelry. So it made it more expensive than like my wedding. So it depends too, I think, on the bride, but definitely if that is a concern for you, ask the bride, because you don't want to say yes thinking it'll be fine. I'll find a cheap dress. And then they're like, surprise, we're all getting matching Reformation dresses or whatever the situation is. So again, just something to have a conversation about early on, I think.
100%. Okay, and then now we're into the wedding day, but as the bridesmaid and maid of honor. So I think the most important thing and most helpful thing you can do for the bride is to know the wedding timeline inside and out. How the day is going to go. I know, Tag, you already mentioned this for just being a wedding guest, but I think being in the bridal party, you are responsible for making sure that plan runs smoothly. So, and especially like you were saying, the guys have no idea what's going on. And typically it's up to the girls to like herd them around and, get them to go where they need to go. So make sure you are aware of the wedding timeline. Maybe you're making friends with the wedding planner if there is one and telling them like, if you need anything, let me know. This is especially important if you're the maid of honor because you do have so many little tasks throughout the wedding day that are your responsibility, like holding the rings, collecting the cards and the gifts. That was the duty I was most stressed about for some reason. But, well, I know why. It's because I'm like, okay, there's probably a lot of money in these cards. I need to hide them before drunk people steal them.
Yeah. My
but
parents
anyways,
were at a wedding where someone stole the card box.
Yeah, I know. That's like the number one ticket item to steal at a wedding. We're also going to tell you what to steal at a wedding. Yeah. If you have financial stress. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very stressed for that reason. But all this to say, know what your responsibilities are for the actual wedding day, know what the timeline is, and then do your very best to follow it and help things move along. I think when it comes to gift giving, I don't know if bridesmaids are expected to give the bride a gift, knowing, they've probably given an engagement gift, bridal shower gift, bachelorette things, and all of those little things leading up to it. However, I do think it is still nice to do something. And a good suggestion, again, in the interest of financial, like just wanting to save a little bit of money, is maybe you're pooling your money together with the other bridesmaids to get the bride something nice. A little can go a long way that way. I think another big responsibility on the day of the wedding is to make sure the bride is cared for. The biggest things being that she's eating and drinking. This sounds so dumb, and it's a tip on every wedding, like website, magazine, anything that you read, but it actually is so important because the day of the wedding, the bride is not thinking about anything except what she has to do next. And there's so much going on. People are asking her so many questions. There's the wedding planner, there's the photographer, there's, all these things are finally falling into place where the last thing she's thinking about is eating and drinking. However, it's such a long day for her that she needs to be energized and fueled up and can't have a migraine in the middle of the day because she hasn't had a drop of water. So make sure she is eating and drinking every chance that she gets. And in the evening, it could also be making sure she always has a glass of champagne or like an alcoholic drink in her hand as well. But yeah, just take care of her. And then also a big maid of honor duty, sometimes a bridesmaid as well, is giving a speech at the wedding. So again, this is something not all maid of honors or bridal parties do. So chat with the bride, see if she is expecting that, if she wants that. I'm somebody who loves writing speeches and giving speeches, so I'm typically like, can I give a speech, But if you're a maid of honor and you're like, oh my God, I really don't want to give a speech, tell that to the bride. I'm sure there's somebody else who will or can step in. But all of this to say, just have that conversation as well. And also know that I've been to other events leading up to the wedding where there's speeches. So if it's at a rehearsal dinner, even at bridal showers, I've been asked to just say a little something about the bride. So I think this is all just things to know, that if a speech comes up or the opportunity for a speech comes up, it'll be the bridesmaids that are asked to give one, outside of family, of course. But
definitely,
I think the last two things, again, might sound kind of silly, but are arguably some of the most important. But as the bridal party, it is your number one mission or priority to be the hype crew on the wedding day, especially at the reception. So this is, going around socializing with the guests. If there's people who don't know other people, like you want to be that friendly face that they can talk to or ask questions to if they have a question for whatever reason. Also just keeping the energy high. Maybe this is starting the dance party or the dance floor after dinner, anything like that. I think just keeping the energy high falls on the bridal party, but that is a very fun task to have. And then lastly is to do whatever you can to make the bride and groom's life easier. And this is really knowing what your job or responsibility is and then doing it promptly, doing it well, being somebody that they can lean on and they know they can delegate tasks to. And then the last and probably most important thing is to do it all happily and don't cause any drama. Don't, be bitching and complaining about it and being like, I don't know, just stirring the pot. I feel like weddings are so interesting. Again, being in so many weddings, I'm like, it's so fascinating to me because it really is all about the bride and groom. But that's what you, again, are signing up for when you say, yes, you will be a bridesmaid. So if you're ever feeling left out from certain things or I don't know, just feeling they're not appreciating it. It's just there's so much going on that it really isn't about you. And I think just not dragging down the energy if you're feeling that way is really important to be mindful of. Great. Well, there you go, guys. We know that was so much information, literally thing after thing, bang, bang, bang. But hopefully you're all set for wedding season now. I feel like weddings are nonstop between May and like October. So if you are buckling up for a busy wedding season ahead, good luck. You got this. But that is everything for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We drop a new episode every Tuesday, so make sure you subscribe and follow us so you see when those new episodes drop. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Our Golden 20s on all the channels, TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest. We have Spotify playlists, and we also have a Patreon page, which is the best way to support the podcast for as little as $2 a month. We drop exclusive content, playlists. We actually have some May desktop backgrounds up there now, so go check that out. And I think that is everything. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.